I'd like to today go over another individual I've worked with over the many, many years. In fact, this is Dave Workman from Workman Associates and part of my Cass County COVID Heroes section. And it's a friend of mine who I've known for decades. In fact, he was the one that helped me learn a little bit about farming. I thought many, many years ago, even though I came from a farming community, I'd buy some farm ground and learn all about tiling, learn about taxes, learn about crop rotation. And I was fortunate enough to get together with a gentleman by the name of Mr. Matt Weber, who joins us today. Hello, Matt.
Hi, Dave.
Big-time family farmer, a good guy. And Matt, why don't you let folks know a little bit? You're up by Royal Center, and why don't you maybe if you can, for 30 seconds, tell us a little bit about yourself as a farmer and growing up on the farm and where you're at right now with your family farming.
Sure. I'm the old guy right now. I farm with two sons. We are I guess the fancy word is a multi-generational operation. I'd have to think about it, but I think I'm maybe about the fourth generation.
Wow.
And I've got two sons that are the fifth generation, and then I have two or three grandsons that who knows what they will do, but if they continue on, that would be number six. So
wow.
I'm proud of the roots that we have. And I guess you could say if we've been at it this long, we should be a lot farther ahead than where we are, but we aren't. So, but God has blessed us, and we've had a lot of fun along the way. We've got a good family. We grow food grade corn. We get a little premium for a little special, for a little extra effort, I guess you might say. Every farmer looks for his own edge these days. The margins are very thin, and that's kind of the way farming has always been. I'm the old guy, as I say. I'm 64 years old now. I've seen a few ups and a few downs. It goes in cycles. That's absolutely the way the business is. This has been kind of an extended down cycle, and then there's been a couple of other unpleasant issues that have piggybacked onto it. So we're kind of in a bit of a farmer, I wouldn't call it a depression, but at least a recession right now. So.
Well, it's interesting, and I just let folks know, Matt has been good enough to join us on his family vacation. So if you hear a yell or two in the background, just a bunch of grandkids having some fun.
That's true.
Here's my first question for you, Matt. How has COVID and the pandemic affected your particular farming operation, or has it?
Well, it absolutely has, and we're no different than any other farm in the country. COVID has had a major effect on all of us, and just as a quick example, as I say, we've been kind of in a downtrend here for several years now, quite honestly, due to lots of things, China issues and overproduction and good genetics in crops that seem to be able to produce no matter what the weather is these days, almost, at least, of course, but just lots of things, and we're just in a cycle low. But last January and February, it would be January and February of 2020, it actually began to look like things were kind of turning around a little bit. Demand was up. A deal looked to be struck with China shortly, and we were selling corn for 30-40 cents above where we were in 2019, I'll say. And then now here, where are we, 6-7 months after the turn of the year, and our corn prices have dropped probably around 70 cents a bushel.
Have they really?
Mainly because of China not exactly pulling through on their end of the deal, on their end of the bargain, which that's still yet to be determined as to how well they will honor what their agreement has been. But the COVID-19 issue has been a significant factor because of just plain reduced demand in the livestock sector, reduced demand in our export sector, and probably and for ethanol production and cheap gasoline. Everybody's staying at home and not driving. Really put a dent in things. Lots of ethanol plants have shut their doors.
Did not know that.
And it won't be most likely it won't be a permanent situation. They will open back up when the cycle turns and things look more profitable. But for now, there are a lot of ethanol plants across the Midwest that are idle right now. So we just plain have a huge carryover of corn. I think the last I saw, the government had it up to 2.45 billion bushel, which is out of a 15 billion bushel crop. That's a significant amount. What I mean when I say carryover is that's the leftover amount of corn that goes from one crop year into the next. That's how much corn is actually left over, and that's quite a wet blanket on the market. That there's no reason for any trader to get excited that or a livestock producer who needs to lock in his feed needs. He's not going to get excited and bid the price up because he's afraid he's not going to be able to get the product, because there's plenty of it out there. That's just the size of it.
Let me ask you, I'm gonna kind of go to a segue with China. And this came up today. Have you heard anything about seeds coming over from China that have been poisoned, for the lack of a better word? My wife and I were talking about it last night, and then I talked to an individual today who said his spouse runs for lack of a better word, kind of a garden club up in Rochester, Indiana. And they heard 2 weeks ago that if they've gotten these seeds packets, they're supposed to have them go to Purdue. And if they've planted the seeds, they're supposed to take the dirt to Purdue. Have you heard anything about that?
Yes, that's been out there for a couple of weeks now, and I don't know any details on it. I don't know where they're actually coming from, or what the idea, what the angle is. Are they trying to sabotage the Corn Belt with with some bad weed that we can't control, or a chemically resistant weed? Who knows what it is? It's just more. China is certainly in the news these days, and it's never good news. That's about all I could say.
No,
so
no, you did.
Many years ago, and in you and I's youth, when Nixon opened up the East, Nixon was really responsible for starting trade, and that was all a good thing. And trade is a great thing for all countries, but it seems like when politics get in the way, like Jimmy Carter did with Afghanistan and the Russians, he embargoed grain, and it's hard to keep politics out of trade. And so I think that's a lot of the situation here, today,
Wow.
these days. So.
Well, and so you've touched upon how it's changed the world markets a little bit. What would you say, you're talking to your boys over a cup of coffee, a piece of pie here. What would you say that your one or two biggest concerns for them are as they go off into the future of farming?
Yeah. Well, I guess we could talk about the business end of farming or the production end of farming, but I think this discussion is more about business than production. And as far as the business end of farming, our country's spending money just like you could, none of us conservative types can believe this. And we were concerned about $21 or $22 trillion debt just 6 months ago, and now we're looking at 30 to 32. Where is the end going to stop? And what happens, Dave, when investors, whoever they may be, begin to lose a little bit of faith, interest rates begin to climb? How is paying the interest on that national debt going to affect our overall economy? And how does that trickle down to my business? I think that's, as far as looking at a really macro view of things, I think that's a little bit of a startling, concerning issue that I don't know which political party is more guilty at that. The Republicans claim conservancy and financial discipline, but it never seems to happen. And the Democrats, at least they're honest. They don't even claim it. So.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of discipline there is, but there's no financial discipline because, I work with money all the time. I have a hard time grasping what $1 trillion is. I mean,
right.
If you really, really figure it out, and that's what I worry about. I mean, of all the things that I worry about.
Yes.
Let me ask you another question. What do you think has been the biggest change in farming since you started? Or a couple of different changes.
Yeah, I think definitely the technical side of it, the electronics. My father, I farmed with my dad, what seemed like most of my life, and he grew up farming with horses.
Wow.
He was 30 years older than me, and he started farming with a team of Belgian horses. and finished up his career trying to run a computer that had auto steer and section control and whatnot. And so I think he probably saw one of the greatest changes, and I'm kind of on his coattails there. I don't go back to horses, but
Right.
I've sit out on an open tractor and eaten a lot of dust in my lifetime. And the technology today is just anything, almost anything you can imagine. They can make it work, and
Yeah.
it's and a lot of it, I will say, up that this has been happening for probably 20 years now. It's not super new, but 15 to 20 years, and every year things get better and more accurate and easier to use. And at first, in my opinion, the payback just really wasn't there. I think it was more of a toy or a gadget. Nowadays, today, you can actually see and prove a payback on a lot of the things. Maybe not everything yet, but as years go on, why it will just continue in that trend. It is not at all outrageous to think that the next generation will be farming running machinery from the desk in the house. Absolutely,
I think you're right. That's a great point.
the, and
That's what,
there are robotic tractors right now that kind of a low dollar, a minimum wage job for a lot of farms is to have an operator who runs a tractor and a grain cart, and that grain cart just runs back and forth between the road where a truck will be waiting to take the corn or the beans away out into the field to catch corn from the combine, to keep the combine running. And that already there are robotics now that operator is not needed to operate that. We don't have that on our farm, but it is out there right now. And again, like all this stuff, every year it will get more affordable, more reliable, and it's just the thing of the future. So
it's interesting because I work with individuals from all over the U.S. In regards to other LPO brokers, and when I talk to them about my rural farm clients, they have no idea that it's such a technologically advanced business on there. I was going to say, when you started off, what was the acreage? How many beans you get per acre, and what do you get now? And how about corn? What would you get bushel per acre
yeah,
in and now?
yeah, I'm going to say 105 or 110, 115 bushel an acre maybe back in the 60s, and now if you're not growing 200 bushel an acre, why there's something wrong with you. And we don't average 200 over the whole farm,
Right.
but nevertheless the genetics and everything is there. That's another thing that my wife just mentioned. Genetics have just improved just tremendously just in my lifetime. Corn and soybeans not so much. Corn's hybridized and soybeans are varieties, but corn is just so much sturdier and harder than it used to be. Cold weather tolerant,
Right.
drought tolerant.
Right.
And then of course there's the whole move of chemical tolerant. You can spray with different chemicals that supposedly kills everything but the corn. Unfortunately, that part of science has kind of been abused to the point where some of those improvements aren't working so well anymore. And there is actually a move back to more old time type of farming for mainly for weed control. And there's a as you well know, there is a move in the country for non-GMO products, GMO meaning genetically modified organisms. So there is a move for where people believe that non-GMO products are healthier and better for them. I don't think there's a bit of science to support that.
Interesting.
But if the market demands that, why, we'll do our best to supply it,
Yep.
and we do just that. So,
Yep.
and there is resistance building in some of these problem weeds out in the fields that where this system where these genetically modified plants have been abused, and they have just used the one chemical for years and years, and plants have learned how to adjust to that, and then now it doesn't work on them anymore. So it is something that's causing some concern, I guess, in circles, agricultural circles.
Well, it's interesting because I don't know about you. We're about the same age, but when we were growing up, I remember corn was knee high by the 4th of July, and now it seems like it's shoulder high by the 4th of July. And I hadn't even thought about the wind resistance, how when I was growing up, because I grew up in a town called Kewanee, Illinois, very similar to
Hmm.
Logansport, out in the middle of the farm fields. We're the hog capital of the world. That was a big deal over there, over by the
Yeah.
corn. And how sometimes good stiff winds would blow across, blow down the corn back in the
Yeah.
late and such. So, well,
Yeah.
I tell you, Matt, I really, really appreciate it. My uh, beginning of this, I called it the Cass County COVID Heroes, and I know you wouldn't classify yourself as a hero, but my
Not at
grandfather,
all.
and I'd mentioned this before in one of these, my grandfather came from Denmark, and he was a dairy farmer, and he always said the farmer never got a lot of respect because the shelves in America were always full. And I'll tell you what was interesting at the beginning of the pandemic was when the shelves weren't full,
Yes.
how people reacted. I mean, there was just
Yes.
a flat out panic when there wasn't everything that had always been there. And if nothing else, maybe this horrible, horrible, horrible disease proved that there are certain things we've taken for granted that we have because we're in the good old US of A that nobody else has, uh,
Yes.
which is
You're
consistent
right.
food supply. So,
Hmm.
well, I tell you what, I appreciate it very much. I appreciate the time you took away from your family here today. We'll have this up, and most of all, I probably appreciate your friendship and just what you've taught me over these last number of decades, Matt. So I look forward to visiting with you and being with you for many years.
It's always been good to talk to you, Dave, and this is no exception. So,
Thanks so much. Thanks for taking some time. We'll talk to you soon.
hey, we'll see you.